It was a very tumultuous time, and I think the thing that we all felt on the board at the time is there was this incredible burden, but it was an incredible privilege. This is the time where bailiff, more than any other time in recent history, was needed. And I think that's when bailiff works best, is when we're needed and together. We have a mission and we're all working together. At that time, we had people marching, we had people demonstrating, we had people raising money, we had people making phone calls, we had people preparing oral arguments, we had people getting petitions out. So everybody was active and everybody was unified at a time and fighting a fight that we didn't think we were going to lose. So when Prop 8 passed, we were devastated.
Certain people were shocked because they thought, how in the world can this have happened, especially in California? But the people who were part of the campaign and people who were working against Prop 8 and the bailiff members that were working the phones, I think we knew it was going to happen because we got hung up. We got called names. This is here in downtown in the financial district, and I'd be holding up a sign and handing out pamphlets against Prop 8, and people would be calling me names. The worst names that I've ever been called, like in terms of being LGBTQ, in my entire life. Because we were holding those signs, people felt like they could do that. And even one of my best friends from law school, Courtney, she's a straight ally, and she was handing out pamphlets to me, and she was called names too. And that's here in San Francisco. And so we knew it was so important to donate money to fight this proposition and get ads out, get more posters out, get more people on the ground to fight this proposition. And then when we lost, we realized it's because we also didn't reach out to the other minority communities.
At the time, there was a crisis in the sense that there was a lot of suicide attempts happening amongst LGBTQ youth. And there was a series of It Gets Better videos being made by celebrities and athletes and politicians, which were amazing. They were saying, hey, don't do it because it's going to get better. And at the time, I was thinking that, hey, this is a wonderful message, but what if we can take it one step further? What if we talk about not only is it going to get better, but here's what we as gay lawyers can do to make it better. So we rallied and we called in the best and the brightest of bailiff. We had the first lesbian judge in the country join our effort. We had the first transgender judge in the country join our effort. We had all sexes, all races, all genders, all ages, and we created a series of 24 It Gets Better videos with the message that, hey, don't do it. Hang on, because it's going to get better. And the reason it's going to get better, because I, as a gay lawyer, this is what I'm doing to make it better for you.
I think if I was in high school and you had asked me if in 30 years marijuana would be legal or if gay marriage would be legal, I would have said for sure pot would be legal and no way will gay marriage be legal. But here we are, and we have seen incredible leadership in the LGBT community that has achieved so much for civil rights.
I remember Molly McKay because she was one of the dinner co-chairs a number of the years I was on the board. And I also remember this because this is early 2000s. So we didn't get marriages in San Francisco until 2004, and those were the temporary marriages. I like to call them the Gavin Newsom marriages. But I remember she was also very, very involved in marriage equality, one of the first marriage equality California organizations before it merged with Equality California. And that's when she would show up in her wedding dress with her partner at the time, who would show up in her tux. And they would, every Valentine's Day, go to City Hall and ask for a marriage license. And then they got the call that they were going to give them the marriage license that year. And I was like, this is historic. So we were kind of ready for it, kind of in bailiff because of our involvement. And it was cool to have bailiff right at the center of that. It was a really natural, logical place for bailiff to be.
It was one of the guys who first said to me, I believe there's a constitutional right to same-sex marriage. And I, who had just gotten divorced, said, you think there's a what? A constitutional right to same-sex marriage, he said. And I thought about it for a nanosecond, and I said, I'm going to have to start teaching that, and I've been doing that ever since.
I was on the board of Lambda during this period of time, and the women were opposed to same-sex marriage, and
Yes.
Tom Stoddard and the men of the world were in favor of it. I hosted
Except for me. I was always for it. Because I said, if I could be married to a man that I didn't really love, why can't I be married to a woman that I really do love?
There is a misperception that the LGBT community is a very affluent community. In my experience, there are many, many folks who are suffering the effects of poverty. And I think that we have a role in working in coalition with our sister organizations to address things around healthcare, housing.
We're still a marginalized group, some of us more so than others. And I don't know, maybe some people feel like they're fine and they don't need it. And if that's the case, then they can go off and do their own thing, you know? And people who still need the support or want to be involved politically can continue in the organization and push the organization in a different direction. If somebody is unhappy with the way the organization or what the organization is doing, then they should become more active in the organization and kind of create the change that they want to see in the world. It's entirely possible to shift an organization. Requires work.
New boards in the last several years, there is quite a commitment to social justice in a broad way. I remember in the years that I was on the board and co-chairing, there was a strong feeling that we must stick very rigidly to our mission. Now I see there's a loosening of that and the recognition of a word that we did not have then, intersectionality. We all had the concept of it. And I think we talked more about coalition politics in those days and how did we work with others from other groups who were also committed to social justice, and we felt we should be finding a way.
The way that racism works in this country and the way that oppression works, and that includes LGBTQ oppression, right, is that it has to constantly be something we're working on and that we're thinking about and getting fresh ideas about, and we get triggered by it. So racial diversity has always been a challenge generally in every organization. Back in the early 2000s, I had spent a few years not being involved in any organizations that weren't all Asian or Pacific Islander. And so then so when my involvement with BALIF, part of it was like, I'm going to get involved in the mainstream LGBTQ community, which I knew was going to be dominated by white folks. But there were enough people of color and enough thoughtful white people trying to really think about it. But it's hard, just, you know, it's just like the same thing with how gay oppression works or LGBT oppression works, which is there's some straight people that don't think they talk to gay people very much and don't think about it. So it's not on their radar. And when you're part of the dominant culture of any subculture, there are things you don't see.
Going forward, for me, it would involve bringing a more intersectional approach to the advocacy that we do. And I think we've seen lots and lots of LGBT organizations across the country having this conversation about how we can show up more for people of color and immigrants and trans folks and ability or disability. And so I think we need to confront those conversations head on, even though they're very uncomfortable, and try to figure out a way to support all members of our communities, especially those who are most marginalized and struggling the most.
I'm glad that we're looking at the whole spectrum and realizing that there are people, whether they're law students, whether they're contemplating law school, or they've graduated, who might not fit in to our notion of who an attorney should be, where you should be working, etc., and who have been either left out, underrepresented, haven't felt that they could kind of claim their place within our spectrum. I'm really appreciative that Bailiff, both in the Bar Association aspect and the foundation aspect, are looking at that.
And I hope that Bailiff can take it on is the mentoring programs and the helping younger lawyers who are struggling to be successful.
I think it was helpful for me in kind of fostering that leadership voice for myself very early on in my career, and providing me with role models of other attorneys who maybe looked more like me, to be able to do the work that I wanted to do and figure out paths to do that. And then I've also been able to give back to others. I was actually a mentor after I was a mentee to a law student. So it's kind of worked both ways.
I hope that Bailiff will help everybody, including lesbians and gay people, come to understand transgender people better.
There are other communities being challenged even more dramatically these days, and that requires all of us to look beyond our own liberation to that of others. That's my hope. That's the role we've always played, and it's needed now really more than ever.